Hello, everyone. I welcome to the third and final day of the conference. It's the weekend, and if it's not a free day for you, you should definitely bunk your jobs, bunk your college, and stay with us for a day of some really pleasurable talks and discussions and performances that we have lined up to wrap up our final day of the conference. This is the keynote, How to Become an Expert of Your Own Life, Innovations in Sex Ed in China with Michael Liu. Before I introduce our speaker, I'd like to inform everyone that this session will happen in English. There are translations available in ISL, which you can already see on the screen, as well as translations available in Hindi and Tamil. To listen to the session in Hindi or Tamil, you have to be attending the session through Zoom, not the live stream. And please click on the globe icon that you can see on the bottom bar of your screen that's labeled interpretation, and you will be able to select the language of your choice. You can click mute the original sound if you don't want that to disturb you. There will be a question and answer session at the end of the panel. Audience members can post their questions in the Q&A box. If you're watching it on one of the live streams, feel free to post the question as a comment on the live stream also. And after the question and answer session, we'll have 4 exciting Pleasure Pocket recordings, which you can see in the schedule. Before I introduce our keynote and our speaker, I'd like to tell everyone that the conference is a space to rejuvenate, reflect, and learn together. Please engage with an open heart, compassion, and respect, even in disagreement. I'd like to let attendees know that there is a resource list of helplines and referral services available on the conference website if that's something you need. There'll be no tolerance for harassment, for casteist or sexist slurs. In case of any concerns you may have around safety or any complaints, you can reach out to the YP Foundation's Internal Committee Against Sexual Harassment at the Workplace or the Conference Safeguarding Committee. You can refer to our chat box and our website lsdindia.com for these email IDs and resources. Now, with the housekeeping out of the way, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our keynote and our speaker, Michael Liu. I've been so excited and curious about this session for several weeks now. And for many people who are listening right now, you may do work aligned with sex education, you might be sex educators, and so many of the sessions so far in our conference have brought in reflections about sex education, not only from the many different contexts of India, but also from Kenya, from UK, New Zealand, and later today, Malaysia as well. And although TV shows like Netflix's Sex Education, which is a TV show about several young adolescents in UK discovering their sexualities and embracing their identities, even though these TV shows are wonderful, as many speakers in our conference have suggested, the dominant ideas of sex education, the dominant principles and measurements of sex education come from the global north. And this understanding of the global north of what sex positivity is and what a sex positive society looks like can't be copy pasted to understand or engage with people in the rest of the world. So, what would a sex education TV show look like if it was set in India? Or what would it look like from the city if it was set in the city our speaker comes from in China? In the in the northeastern Chinese city of Shenyang, a group of queer activists created sex education programs to help young people embrace their own identities and that of others. The program was conducted and conceptualized by the people at the margins. Sex education programs that were taken by queer folks, by trans people, by people living with HIV. So its starting place was not the dominant groups of society, and hence its starting place was not with the accepted idea of normal. So how did this approach make young people embrace their sexuality and deeply connected to that, embrace their identities? What are the curiosities these activists, educators, and facilitators found that young people in China had? And what was the part pleasure played in all of this? It gives me great pleasure to welcome our keynote speaker, Michael Liu. Michael used to work as the Vice Director and Project Manager at the Consultation Center of AIDS, Aid, and Health Services for 10 years. He also works as a consultant at Northeast Transgender Support Network. These two NGOs both advocate for LGBTI plus rights, HIV/AIDS support services, and sex workers' human rights advocacy in Asia and the Pacific region. In May 2020, Michael joined APNSW and the Communications and Policy as the Communications and Policy Officer to work on sex workers' human rights protection. After Michael's keynote, Manak will join us for a question and answer session. You might be familiar with Manak by now. He's the co-curator of our conference and he's been a part of many of our panels and discussions. Manak is a feminist, queer activist, and the executive director of the YP Foundation, who are co-organizers of this conference and also implement sexuality education programs, both in and out of school with diverse communities of young people. Manak himself has an extensive experience of working as a trainer with young people and organizations on issues of gender and sexuality and health. Thanks so much for joining us, Michael. I'm really curious to hear about your work, and the stage is all yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Shika, for your great introduction. And I feel so honored to be invited by the conference. And thank you, everyone, for coming. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to my session. Can you open the PowerPoint for me? Okay. Okay, got it. So today I'm going to share the innovations in sex education in China on how to become an expert of your own life. Just now, Shika introduced that I used to work for Northeast China, a local community-based organization. And now I work for APNSW in Asia and the Pacific region. It's a regional network that works for sex workers. So next, please. The sex education training program was started in 2011 and ended in 2017 for 6 years. So at that time, I was working for China Love Aid, and it is a community-based organization, or in Chinese we call it the grassroots organization, which was founded in 2002, and we work with people living with HIV, LGBTI people, and sex workers. We call them all sexually marginalized groups. So not only providing direct service to the community, we also do legal advocacy and capacity building to young people, to newly founded organizations and CBOs. Next. So before I formally start my presentation, I want to ask everyone a question: that who do you think is our best teacher for sex education? Due to the time limitation, please think of the answer by yourself, or you can also feel free to share it on the chat box. We don't have time to call you out to answer the question, but please think about it. Who is the best teacher for our sex education? Next. Now, let me give you a little background about the sex education training in China. How is it possible? So usually the first and most frequently asked question is, due to the political environment in China, how can it possible to talk about sex publicly or to do sex education training? Is it dangerous? Is it possible? I would say that compared to the situation, the context in India, China is a little different. That when you do rise, do campaign, do advocacy, is more dangerous than doing sexuality or sex education training. So to us, sex or sexuality is less sensitive than doing human rights or rights-based advocacy, because that is a kind of a taboo in Chinese context. And second, why do we start it? Because schools in China, they usually lack of sex education course to young people, which give us an opportunity to do by ourselves. And number three, a high risk of HIV transmission among young people. Due to the HIV transmission, the Chinese government started to think that sex education is important because people need to be aware of HIV, STIs, and other social issues. And we, the community-based organization, are invited to give advice and do some collaboration with the government-led organizations and some, government institute. They have little funding for HIV prevention. Then we use that HIV prevention fund to do HIV prevention work, of course. But on the other hand, we can do something like sex education training to include not only HIV issues, but also LGBT sex workers and other sex-related things. And last but not least, is that we have inclusive donors who care about people-centered changes. This is very important. Our biggest donor was Ford Foundation, but they left China in 2017. They stopped the sexuality program, so we have to end our training ever since. But that's a really, really good donor. They care about the people-centered changes. And they say, we don't want big data or something. We want people to change their mindset, to change their ideology on sex or sexuality to be more inclusive. Next. So who are our trainers and who are our trainees? For the trainees or the participants, all young people from 18 to 20 years old are invited, are welcome to participate in the training. And we have a focus on people living with HIV, LGBT, women, sex workers, and all young people. So all people who have puzzles, who want to communicate more, who want to make a change, want to learn from others, especially from peers, they are welcomed. And also for the trainers, they are also from young people. We have a age limit from 18 to 28 years old. So I will explain the age limit later. And also the trainers, usually they were the previous trainees as TP volunteers. And also we have invite some NGO workers or civil workers to be our trainers or facilitators. Next. So now let's have a glance of the training. So this photo is very meaningful to me because this was the photo of our first training in 2011. So at that time, our training agenda was not that perfect, but little by little, when we organize more trainings, we make it more perfect, like now. So now I'm going to share with you with our training agendas. Next. So usually for our first part of the agenda, there will be an icebreaker. We have different games throughout, playing games, people throughout the workshop. But the first thing is icebreaker, which to us is super important. Usually we will prepare many small pieces of papers, and on each paper we have written something like white socks, black socks, the words you can see it, right? Underwear, athlete, feed, bondage, BDSM, submissive, 3-person, public sex, everything related to sex, sexuality, sex fantasy, sex practice. You can see all, HIV, people living with HIV, even disabilities or open relationships, like bears, very popular in gay community, right? So we have everything here written here. And each participant is required to choose 3 pieces of the paper. And later they will share one by one, like why do you choose these 3 papers, not the others? Why is it related to your sexuality? It can be your sex fantasy, sex experience, preference, or the stories you hear, or your dream sex, or anything related. You don't have to share about your own sexuality. You can share something that, such as a story that you heard from other people. That's also okay if you don't feel comfortable sharing something too personal. But this is really interesting because you can see that we have listed all this, straightforward words related to sex. It can be awkward, but it will open a new door for all the participants to share about their opinions, because these words are straightforward. They are all about sex. You have to talk about that. And this is a sex education training. So this is our first part. Next. So the goal of our icebreaker is, first, everyone can freely talk about sex in the public. This is For this, we want to make sure that everyone can find our environment very safe, so they can say everything about this, right? Because usually this is a 2-day training. For the first part, if everyone can share about sex publicly with our peers, then we can share any kind of topic, because this is usually the most difficult one. And second, everyone has an equal opportunity to speak out. This is very important for full participatory, because we ask our participants to participate actively, and they have to share their opinions. They cannot just sit there and listening to other people talking. This is not allowed. So for each part, part of the agenda, everyone is asked to at least speak once. We don't want other people to dominate the conversation. And third, they can express information that all sexuality-related thoughts and activities are accepted without any judgment. We can see that all the words are kind of dirty, the dirtiest words, right? So if we can accept all these words, then no one should judge you by your, by your speech, by your word, by your kinky thought, maybe. So feel inclusive and non-judgmental. And last, and very important thing is the peer-to-peer learning process by peer influence. That's why we have people from all from the same age range. We can learn from each other's story, and this is unexpected and diverse, right? We don't know what to come, what to expect, because sometimes people share totally different stories and their thoughts about sexuality, which is really, really interesting. Next. And the second part usually is the storytelling, which is called the best sex experience sharing or the worst. The participants are asked to share either their best sex experience or their worst sex experience, and they can share their own experience or others' experience if they don't feel comfortable to share their own story, and they can. For some people, they say, okay, we have 0 sex experience. What am I going to share? Then you can share your dreamed or ideal sex experience. That's also okay. And at the end of your sharing, you have to give 3 reasons on why do you think this is the best or worst story for yourself, and why, and what do you care most in your sex practice? Because usually we think, okay, this is something we don't like, but we don't know why we don't like it. Maybe you are not aware of that, but after you share your story, other people can ask questions, like make comments and say, why do you think so? And then you can explore yourself deeper. Next. So the lessons learned for the storytelling. First, your best sex practice can be others' worst, and vice versa. This is very, very true, that some people say, okay, I love this, and some people, oh my God, that's terrible for myself, which we need, which means that we need to make our workshop inclusive and non-judgmental. And second, different people care about different process and results. This is very true. People have different taste, have different life experience, and you know yourself better than others. This is the key message that we want to express, that people cannot make decisions for you, because you are your own expert for your sexuality. And also, storytelling is a great way to stay connected with peers. At the beginning, we don't want our training to be too serious, too deep, right? We just want people to share stories, to relax, to talk with each other, to get familiar with each other. And it's a perfect opportunity to unlock various sex practice for free, right? Because we hear so many stories and everyone has a new story. It can be totally different than yours. We can definitely learning from other people. Sex is something that can be and should be talked freely. And after the first 2 parts, the other participant will get a message, okay, that I can share my story. I can share anything about sex freely and without any concerns. So that's the main goal of the first 2 parts. Next. And there's another one interesting thing about our agenda is that how to hook up with potential partners on dating apps. So in this part, we will invite everyone to send out their profile photos and introductions on their dating apps. And we will make comments and ask questions and then vote who do you think is most attractive to you, even though you don't know the person, but you have seen one of the profile photo and the introduction paragraph. What do you think, and which one do you think is the most attractive? Who do you want to date? And usually we'll get a very interesting result. And sometimes some people will volunteer and say, okay, I think the only problem on your profile photo is that you don't know how to make up or how to dress up. I can help you for free. So then sometimes we have an extra session on how to make up and dress up properly on shooting photos for profile photo, which is really interesting. Next. So some fun facts about dating apps. First, your own taste on your own profile photo is somehow always different from your target audience. This is very true. I myself also experienced that when I share my photo and paragraph to other people and they say, oh, this photo looks terrible. But to me, I think, oh my God, this photo is perfect. But other people, they don't have the same taste. So we have to please our target audience in order to be selected. That's the main goal. And second, regard yourself as a product when you compose your intro. This is also important that if you don't attract your potential target audience, you cannot start a conversation and you cannot hook up with other people. You lose all your opportunities. And last, one thing that was the most important is the sense of humor that is a plus during communication. If you are humorous enough, you can also have more conversations and more opportunities. Next. And then it comes to some deeper conversation like a debate. So usually we have 2 or 3 debate questions. These 5 questions are the most frequently used questions. The first one is, can people living with HIV have sex with other people? And second, do you support the decriminalization of sex work? Third, should feminine boys or cis boys or masculine or T girls be corrected? 4, do you support LGBT people to come out at a younger age? 5, is it possible to divide sex from love or divide sex from a relationship? Next. So our key points on the debate is that first, participants have to defend the opposite opinion. What's that mean? That if, for example, we ask the first question like, can people living with HIV have sex with other people? And you say, okay, yes, I support this. But you have to choose the opposite opinion and defend your opposite opinion, like, no, they cannot do that. You have to find your reasons or logics to defend your opinion. And each person has to contribute at least 1 point. For the people who are not decided, they are in the middle. They neither support or nor non-support. They will be in the middle as the judges. So the people will be divided into 2 groups. One support, one doesn't support, and people in the middle will be the judges. Throughout the debate process, they can move from this way to the other way to show, okay, I support this part or that part based on their performance. And finally, there will be a final discussion and summarization by the judges or by the people in the middle, and what do you think can summarize the 2 parts and why do you support this over that. Actually, in this debating process, the preparation process itself is more important than debate, because you have to find a reason to support the opposite opinion than your original one, which is really difficult. Next. And there are also some possible outputs. Usually during a sex education training, some people say, okay, we invite teachers to teach you about HIV, about sex work, about this, that. But throughout the debate process, people or participants can find things, knowledge, everything by themselves. They can learn that from their peers or from the internet when they prepare their debate very effectively. For example, for the first question, like can people living with HIV have sex with others? They can talk about human rights, like sexual rights is human rights, or the responsibilities. For example, if I have sex with a person living with HIV and I get infected, who will take the full responsibility? Is it like both of us, or one will take like 100% responsibility? Also, HIV transmission and prevention, HIV-related laws and policies in China, the rule of laws and law reforms, and also legal cases. Like the most important and obvious thing in China is the medical discrimination and employment discrimination to people living with HIV. And also PrEP, PEP, and EU equals EU campaigns. All these things will be covered during just one debate, which is really, really efficient. Next. So we also same to other like topics to support the decriminalization of sex work. So usually they will talk like, is sex work a job? Can we take full control of our body? Because this is a big thing, because in China, like we have family planning, right? In the past, we have one child policy, but now it's okay. People can have 2, 3, 4 children without fines or punishment. And do the government have the rights to regulate our body? What's the difference between decriminalization and legalization? The discrimination and violence against the sex workers, and the misinformation and misconceptions toward sex workers. This will all be covered. And next, please. For other debating questions, we have similar things. Due to the time limitation, I'm not going to cover all of them. So for this one also, like people say, carry your own business. I can be a feminine boy or a masculine girl. It's none of your business. Next, please. So, okay, this is also a very interesting part. We have a practice. Like during our lunch break or dinner break, we will ask our participants to buy condom to a convenience store or drugstore to buy some condoms, because usually this is kind of awkward. That when we buy condoms from the store, we usually want to shorten our time to communicate with the salesman. But now we are asking them to maximum the time for communication. They can ask questions and document their process and share with other people. Like this is to ensure that, we want to desensitize condom, because for us, condoms means safety, right? In Chinese, it's called 安全套. When we translate it into English, it's called safe cover. It's not all about sex, it's about safety. And also we can bargain with the sellers and document the whole process. Next, please. So usually our participants will have conversations with the salesman. Next, please. And they will ask questions like, which condom do you recommend and why? And, my size is 15 centimeter. What size is best suits me? Something like that. In the past, they never tried that before, but now they have to finish their assignment and have to face this kind of question. Next, please. Okay. So usually during the first night, the first evening of the training, of day one training, we will screening documentary the storytellings. Usually it's about transgender people, transgender sex workers, and we will invite people, our like experts, to share their opinions. Usually the experts covers like people living with HIV, transgender people, and experienced sex workers. And other participants will be very surprised, because these so-called experts are their peers. So they have the whole day discussing buying condom together and having lunch together, and they are peers. And then some of them become experts, and the rest of them didn't know that, oh, you are a person living with HIV, or you are a trans person, or you are a sex worker. It's so funny because during the daytime they talk about people living with HIV issues, right? And transgender issues and sex worker issues. But later they find out the person you are talking with, they are really from the community of sex workers and transgender people. And this is really, really powerful. And some people share after the training, like, oh my God, I've never met a person living with HIV in my life. I thought I'm inclusive enough without any stigma and discrimination. But when I know someone is living with HIV who just hugged me or we just had lunch together, I still feel a little worried or afraid. But now, since I have already experienced this process, I have zero discrimination, and I totally feel okay to have lunch or dinner with a person with living with HIV. And also, sex workers are good people. They can be our friends. They can we can discuss publicly for free. This is really, really wonderful, positive comments from our participants in the past years. Next. Talking about sex workers, they are really they are the real our sex experts. You know, not only because they are experienced, they know they have a different practice and knowledges. They are experienced in reading people. You know, I have so many sex worker friends. They told me that they have to read a person within 10 or 20 seconds to see if this person is a policeman, is a dangerous person going to harm you or not, or is going to pay you or not. You have to tell from their looks, like within 10 seconds, to make a decision if you want to take it as a client or not. And also they are experiencing in meeting various clients, like people living with HIV and other STIs, different ages, different identities, right? And their negotiating skills with sexual partners is perfect. They have to negotiate with their clients and other people, and on, for example, how to keep safety and healthy, like using condoms. A lot of customers, they don't want to use condoms, so they have to persuade them to use condom. That's very, very important negotiating skills. Many young people, they before they contracting HIV, they don't know how to say no to people who don't want to wear a condom. That's a big deal in China still today. And also they share experience on how to divide sex from love or divide sex from a relationship, and also creating useful sex environment. Some sex workers, they are very smart. When they have clients at home, they invite clients at home. They usually create some environment to show that their parents are at home living in the next room, so we have to stay quiet and don't wake them up. So in this way they can protect themselves, because they don't want to be harmed by some of the clients before they have sex. Next, please. And this is one this is very how to say some words from my friend called Mingyang. I'm not going to read it in Chinese, but below there is a translated version in English. She said, she is a trans women sex worker. She says during our presentation, she said, okay, I'm enjoying my sex. Penis on my left hand, money on my right hand, pleasure and orgasm in the middle. So which means that she really enjoys having sex. Not like other stories. People depict sex workers like they are living miserable life. But there are still a lot of people, a lot of sex workers, they are living happily and they enjoy doing this kind of work. Next. So usually the last part of our training is open space. We will ask everyone to share their opinions on first, how can we improve ourselves in the next training workshop. If, for example, you are the organizer, you are the facilitator, what do you want to make to change in the next training, feel free to tell us that which one do you think is better, or which part today you feel that not very good can be improved. Or what are the takeaways for our workshop, for our work and study in the future? Who wants to volunteer and facilitate the next workshop? Because all our trainings are facilitated by our young people, and some of them are our previous trainees. And last, what resources are needed to copy this training in your community? Because we encourage everyone to share the information and copy our model in their school or in their community if they want. We can provide all the resources they need. Next. So this brings to our to the level 2 training. It's called the Youth Leadership Building Training Workshop. So for the people who wanted to learn more, so for example, some people when they finish the training, they say, okay, I want to contribute more in the future. I want to learn more and share what we have learned in our community. What do they do? So usually we will teach them how to mobilize resource, how to found an NGO or student union, how to improve your network and public speaking skills, how to write proposals and budgets, how to analyze risks and avoid the risks. So these are all needed when you found an NGO or found a student union at school. Next. So these are the outputs and outcomes throughout the past 6 years. We have organized more than 20 times of workshops and 5 level 2 workshops. And these are all the outputs. You can see that we provide technical support for the newly founded NGOs and student unions to apply for different funding. 6 student union and 3 LGBTI-oriented NGOs was founded after people attending our training, which is really grateful and happy. Next. So I have prepared some do's and don'ts just in case you may have some questions, but since we don't have much time, I only have 5 minutes left, so I'm going to skip this. Go next. Please, next. Yes, next. Next, please. Yes, okay. So all our sex education training is about identities. It seems like they are related to sex or sexuality, but actually they are all about identities. Are you a girl? Are you your only child in your family? And also, the LGBT people, sex workers, people living with HIV, we have all different identities. So if one of the identities is problematic, for example, we have a bad self-identification, then there will be a problem which affect our sex experience and sex thoughts. So all will be related to identities. And this is what we want to stress. Next, please. So be your own expert on sexuality. Don't accept others people know better than yourself. This is a transgender sex worker that I interviewed. She's also my friend. She told me at the beginning that I don't care about other people's attitude. I only care what my parents think about me. And later she said, okay, now I don't want to care my parents' thoughts. I just want to live my own life. I can decide my own life. Next, please. And also we embrace new possibilities after we participate in the training. For example, this is myself. Some of my transgender friends, they told me that, you know what, you can be a pretty girl. We'll dress up and with the makeups and we can help you. At the beginning, I wasn't thought I can be such pretty, but after trying, I feel like, oh my God, this is great. I really enjoy myself being like this. I will try more. So I never thought about that, but thanks to the training, I know more people. I make more friends who help me to achieve more possibilities. Next. And then leadership building and networking building. We want our participants to do something bigger, which means that, when they go back to their school and their community, we want them to organize their own trainings like this, and we can provide technical support and financial support. And these are the transgender friends. They go back to their trans community and they organize similar training, which is really colorful and beautiful. Next. People say that, our training is about having sex, having, orgasm, but actually we would say that our training, the main purpose of our training is to help our participants to live more confidently, to accept all their identities. For example, here are 4 sentences that, they are my takeaways, kind of my thoughts, personal thoughts. So first, sex is as normal as having lunch to me. So there's nothing taboo that I cannot mention. Second, our penis, vagina isn't that different from our hands. They should be equal, right? They're all our body. And please stay humble and ask questions to your sex worker friends because they are powerful, they are experienced, they can give you more advice when you need. And last, sex should be enjoyable. If not, please try someone else or try something new. That's my suggestion. Next, please. So do we have any donors who can support this kind of sex education workshop in the future? Please feel free to reach me because our program just ended in 2017. Now there are no donors supporting us with this. If you know some resource, please help me with this. And thank you so much for your attention. And this is all from me. Yeah, and I'm happy for the Q&A session.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much, Michael. It was so great to hear your presentation. Also, because we implement sexuality education programs, and so much of what you were saying resonated with how we also look at programming. And I have many questions that I want to start with. We have some questions and more coming in the Q&A box. So let me start with that. One of the questions that has come specifically about the training, and I can take that one first, is during the trainings, do people express a desire to change or influence policies? And if so, how do you address that? So that is also something I wanted to ask. A lot of this is directly related to sexuality issues with young people in their own lives. How do you also build a consciousness of policies? There was a whole section on creating debates that you had in the way you do trainings where people talk to each other. So if you could speak a little bit more about how participants engage with policies around sex and sexuality as well.
Okay, that's a good question. So usually policy and law and policies are very, very important to our life. But in China, it's more difficult to change or do a reform, a campaign. I would say compared to that in India, because that would be super dangerous and risky for us to achieve this. As I explained just now that, we can talk about sexuality, sex publicly, that's okay. But if you say, oh, this law is evil, it's harming us, harming sex workers or other people, that's dangerous. So this, but we can debate, we can talk about that. But in terms of practice, if you want to go out and say we want to interact with the government people and want to do a law reform or policy reform, that's another level, and which will be more difficult. But still, we want our young people to be involved in discussing this kind of things because it's powerful and it's really helpful for them to think critically on how we treat the laws. Like, for example, like 23 years ago, being gay is illegal, and now it's decriminalized, right? It's little by little. So we are not afraid of being gay. It's totally okay. But 23 years ago, we cannot talk about that, right? Because it's illegal. So everything can change. Everything has we have the power in the future to change anything, but it takes a little long time.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And I think one of the things of something I want to say is I really love this idea of turning the idea of who is the expert on its head and saying that actually how we typically imagine in development interventions, right? That there are sex workers, there are so-called key populations, quote unquote, if I use that development lingo, who are in need of education. And the other experts are going to come and give them that kind of education on sexuality issues. You've turned it completely around. And I wanted to really ask you about that. Like, what is the additional value of this peer-led approach, of this approach of the communities speaking to each other and informing them about their sexual lives and sexual practices? Why is that important?
Thank you. That's a great question. This is actually the key value behind our training. Like usually when we organize training like this, we will say, okay, it's wrong to have discrimination or stigma toward sex workers, toward the people living with HIV, transgender people. But it's not effective, and we don't like that attitude. We don't want to say, okay, don't harm me. I'm innocent. I'm not wrong. No, I want to say we are better. We are more experienced. We can be expert in some ways. Everyone can be an expert in some way in your field. So we will find out the way. The way is that sex education, in the sexual practice and sex field, they know more and they want to talk more to people. And usually, for example, the first part of the training, usually transgender people, sex workers, they are very, very talkative. They lead the conversation. Otherwise, it will be awkward, right? Some people, they are too innocent. Some young people, students, they keep silent and they don't want to talk first. But other people, when they lead the conversation, other people will say, okay, if they can share these dirty things, then I can also share them. So this is the mindset behind the training. They are experts. They are real experts. And we want to use their expertise to teach other people or to interact with the people. That's really, really helpful.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And I think this whole idea that you're also saying, right, of who are the marginalized populations. And while we were planning this conference, one of the key things that we engaged with was that in any program, in any policy or program that is being designed, if you design for the people or the communities that are considered at the edge, at the margins, then you automatically take care of everything else that is in the middle. So I want you to speak to this idea a little bit, like a sexuality education program that is talking about all of these diverse issues of so-called marginalized, so-called people who are on the margins, right, who are not the norm. Right, a program that takes care of all of those issues, would it then automatically take care of everybody else and their sexuality if it is scaled up to be taught to everybody else in the population in general?
Yeah, so this is also very important for our training, that we treat everyone equal, and we want to make ourselves as inclusive as possible in a non-judgmental way. That whoever you are, whatever the crazy thoughts you have, the kinky thoughts, anything, just feel free to share them. And if the only rule in our training is that you cannot harm other people, you cannot you have to respect each other's opinion. This is their story, and you must listen to them. You can have different opinion or suggestion. That's totally okay, but you cannot say, I don't like your story, or you have to shut up. No, that's not allowed. Anyone can share anything about this. And sometimes, we even have the legal margins. For example, people say, I like group sex, but group sex is dangerous and is illegal. And, so usually we would tell them that, okay, please share something not personal, like group sex about the other people you hear, right? Not, even though this is your own story, we still want to protect you. And one of the most important things is that we will ask everyone to not share our story outside our meeting room. If we finish our training and you go out, you cannot tell other people that I hear someone saying this. No, you can hear that. You can say that, okay, I got a story from a person, I don't know, then blah blah about the story. That's okay, but you cannot name that person, or you take a photo or video or something. This is not allowed. We want to keep this environment as safe as possible, so that everyone is relaxed and free to talk about everything.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. And I think this is a very important aspect that you're outlining of ensuring that, and this is a line that we continuously toe, right, when we are implementing sexuality education programs, that having healthy, open conversation, but also ensuring that nobody comes under harm by the existing legal framework, which might not be as open as you would like the framework of talking about sexuality to be. And that actually brings me to some of the questions that are also coming into the chat box right now. One is that, we've heard a lot about the two-child norm policy or the one-child norm policy in China. And there is a question that says, how does the skewed gender ratio in China affect people's dating lives, assuming a vast majority being conventionally heterosexual and monogamous. What are your organization's experiences in dealing with this? And I would expand that to also saying, how do you navigate this kind of culture? Because in India, there is more and more talk now of a two-child norm that our government maybe is considering right now. In China, we've already seen that kind of a phase earlier where there is a coercive population policy. How does that impact the way you do sexuality education or any work on sexuality that has to push for more agency to people?
Can you repeat the question? I didn't find the question on the chat box.
Yeah, there is a question on the chat box.
Oh, I didn't find it.
So does the skewed gender ratio, and it's maybe about data as well, right? Is there a skewed gender ratio, and does that come up when you're doing your work or interactions with people in your programs?
Gender issues, right?
Gender ratio. So the ratio of men is to women, the population gender ratio in China.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay, got it. Gender ratio. Okay. Yeah, that's a very important question. So when we invite people to come, we usually have like we have more like females than males, because we want more females to participate in this program, and also we have transgender people. So every time we will have transgender people, sex workers, male, female, usually half and half, and sometimes we want to keep them like 50%, like male and female. Sometimes more females. That's also okay. That's. Am I answering the question?
Yeah, I think I think it's good to know the way you organize your trainings and you keep it in there. I think the question was in general about, does the gender ratio in China, like the ratio of men is to women in China, affect people's dating lives? And this is something we continuously hear as well, right?
Okay, I see. Okay. Now I got it. Okay. Yeah. I heard some data before that there are more there are more boys than girls, and it's harder for Chinese men to find a wife. I heard that, but things can change. I'm not sure, but I don't think that's a big problem, because in nowadays in China, like especially in the city, so many people they're single, and they are very comfortable being single. Like I have so many female friends, they are over 30, 35 years old. They stay single and they make a living in the city, with freedom, and they're totally okay. So I don't think that's a concern in our society.
Yeah, and I think even the way you structure your programs, right? Talking about dating apps and safety, all of that, I think that's a very important part of it, to stay informed about what is happening in society and culture and bring it into the programs is kind of adding that kind of creativity into development work, which is so heartening to hear in your work. And so the last question is also around the impact of the social and the cultural on programs. So how will the recent statements by the government about effeminate men on TV and the emphasis on a certain kind of masculinity, how does that affect the work that you're talking about, this performance of gender and this gender norm?
Yeah, this is a trend. Sadly, this is the trend in China now, that there are so many stupid policymakers. They are doing some stupid things, and like people usually say that it's a lot of the celebrities, they are like movie stars or singers. They are too sissy. They are not masculine enough to lead our social culture into the right direction. A lot of stupid things like this. So sadly, we can do nothing to change the policy, because a lot of other people in the society, they support them. And the populism in China is getting stronger and stronger. Something maybe not that relevant to my topic. Like, for example, 2-3 years ago, when you say, patriotism is kind of like a joke to some people, or like a negative description, but now it's kind of like a politically right thing to do, to be patriotist. I love China. China is strong. China is the best. I really don't like it. But now due to the social media and big data, everything has changed. So whenever there are policies, stupid policies like this, like we want to eliminate city boys, a lot of people they support them, but we want to do something like a media campaign to say that we support them, but it's kind of very weak to affect the policy or the laws in China, yeah, and it goes to a more and more wrong direction, which is terrible.
Thank you. So we are down to our last few minutes. So I'm going to quickly bring in all the questions that are coming in right now. One is a question
Great.
of whether sex education is compulsory in schools in China. So are there any scaled up or otherwise sex ed programs that happen in schools?
Yes. So in our school, like primary school or middle school, we are asked to take the courses, but usually what do the school or the teachers do? They will say, okay, there's no teachers teaching you anything. I will give you a book or something and you just use it. And for other sex education training led by the government, usually these facilitators or the trainers are so stupid, they only teach you, okay, give me a banana and I will teach you how to open a condom and how to wear it, and that's all. So no other things about this, or they have something but not that comprehensive as ours. Yeah.
I think that's a very similar scenario. Like in India, in policies, a lot of curricula, etc., exist. But in the implementation, like you're saying, the teachers don't really know themselves, and it's a pretty similar situation. But I wanted to ask you this question because a scaled up, whether it is in schools or not, came up, and maybe this can be the last question because we'll have to close. Is that one thing that we are focusing on in this conference is also on data, and something that has come up is that particularly on queer people's lives, there is very less organized authoritative data. So do you also use any big data, and when you're running funded interventions, continuously donors will ask what is the data to show that this is relevant, give us the data to show why this should be done. So do you also engage with data, or is there any data about queer people's or sex workers' lives that you rely on when you implement your programs?
Yes, we do. We have like questionnaire, online questionnaires, or before or after the conference, the training. So we collect all the data. But in terms of data, I want to share more about data in China. Due to the technology development, everyone has smartphone, and it's really, really difficult for queer people or for sex workers to protect themselves because the government can also use the data to target us. Recently, in the past 2-3 weeks, I have heard so many stories happening on our transgender sex worker friends. They are kind of arrested or abused by the policemen because they are using like dating apps or other social media accounts, and the policeman use them to hook up with other sex workers and bring them to the police station and say, okay, tell me other people, other sex workers. We want to check if they are drug users because they have kind of assignment. Policemen have assignments to arrest a certain number of drug users to show their efficiency or something. So data is kind of good thing, but it's a dangerous thing. We have to protect ourselves. And now it becomes more and more severe. It becomes a problem for a lot of people, like drug users and sex workers, because they may have a criminal record. Am I off topic? Sorry.
No, not at all. I think what you're saying, in fact, is reminding me of a keynote that we did yesterday, where our speaker was talking about how historically certain specific communities, because of their either racial background or specific backgrounds, have been criminalized, have been deemed problematic, habitual criminals, quote unquote. And I think in policing, this happens a lot, right? You have assumptions about certain communities that are the problem communities. And even without actually there being a valid, legitimate reason, they are continuously policed, surveilled, and have to be additionally careful. So how does that play up? Because you are also engaging with specifically these communities when you bring them into your program. So what kind of safeguarding or what kind of precautions do you have to take?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, The data is a big thing. It's varying everyone. There is a blacklist, like for sex workers and drug users. If you were arrested before, the next time we'll check out in a hotel or go someplace like airplane or something. So the alarm will wake you everyone up, and they will call the police and to fix you up. So not good, really not good. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing, Michael. I think we're just about out of time. We're at the last minute of our discussion. So I would just like to thank you so much for bringing in all of this experience and sharing it in great and really fun, exciting detail with everybody here. I know that the audience has a lot of people who are themselves engaged with or thinking about sexuality education programs. In fact, one of the last questions is, how can we become sex ed certified in India? So to that, I would just say there are a bunch of panels on sexuality education later today. There is one on digital sexuality education interventions, and I think some resources can be shared there about courses that exist. But yeah, I would just like to thank you so much, Michael, for being part of the conference, for bringing in your experience and your thoughts to inform all of us. And
I want to thank you. I want to thank you and thank you for the conference to invite me as a keynote speaker. I'm really grateful, and thank you for all the participants who come. And if you have any questions or further, I want to have a further follow up, you can just send me the email. I'm so happy to connect you with other NGOs or resources in China. I'm doing this for like over a decade, so I'm kind of resourceful, so I'm always ready to help. Yeah, just reach me out and send me an email. Feel free. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for being so generous with your time and your help. I think, as everybody might have realized, Michael is an extremely approachable and friendly person. So, and we've put in links to Michael's work in the chat. Please feel free to follow that and get in touch if you want to. With that, I'll hand over back to the MC, back to Shikha, to take us further into today's program.
Hi, everyone. Thank you again, Michael, for that amazing talk. It was really interesting to hear about sex education in China. I think there are some things which are quite similar to the Indian context, and then there are some things which are very different. And I think it definitely leaves us, even those who have already been working in sex education, it leaves us with some revelations about the possibilities of sex education and sex education training. And as you said so beautifully, it's about identities and not just about sex. It's about being able to communicate. And that's why it's so interesting why the experts, the sex workers, people living with HIV who you chose, are experts in teaching us about how to embrace our identities, about how to communicate what you want. And thank you, Manak, for the lovely discussion. And now, just to move on to the second part of our session, we're going to now listen to 4 pleasure pockets. And like Manak had described in an earlier session, it's like putting your hand into your pocket and finding a little pleasure, be it a 20 rupee note, be it dried leaves from the last time you went to the park, or a crumpled note that reminds you of an outing with a friend. These pleasure pockets are 7 to 10-minute talks from some really interesting people. And I'll just tell you a little bit about them before we listen to what they have to say. And Michael spoke to us about an approach to sex education that is pleasure positive, that is about understanding what gives you yourself pleasure. So a lot of our pleasure pockets today are also dealing with sex education, with pleasure. The first one, and you can try saying this with me because it's a tongue twister. Dil de dildo dildo is our first pleasure pocket, and it's a talk by Tanisha R, CEO and co-founder of Sangya Project, a company that creates sex toys and approaches the sex from a trauma-informed and kink-affirmative perspective. Also, if you go through their social media, not only do they make beautiful sex toys, but also have quite creative minds that can give anyone some new ideas. So she'll speak to us about the beautiful sex toys that they create. The next pleasure pocket, Hum Do Hamare Ek Do Teen, is a pleasure pocket where Aprajita Sarkar will speak to us about the history of birth control in India. And birth control is obviously a significant part of sex education. But how has the Indian government approached birth control and family planning over the years? And how has this impacted various genders and sections of society? After that, we'll have another lovely pleasure pocket by the artist Sandeep TK. Sandeep's work as an artist engages with the idea of human relationships and desires through memories, personal experiences, and oral histories. Sandeep will speak to us about a series of portraits he made with his friends from the trans community in Kerala. It began with a question where he asked them about their dreams, what they wanted to be seen as, of what they wished to become. We'll hear from Sandeep the story of the portraits that emerged from this question. After that, we'll have another pleasure pocket by Suhas Mishra called The Data and the Idea of Man. Suhas is the CEO at Misters, a Gurgaon-based health and confidence startup catering to men's sexual health and wellness. And he'll talk to us about how when there is no data on something, stereotypes thrive. And so how do we complicate the idea of what man is to move past these stereotypes? And now let's move on to the pleasure pockets. I hope you enjoy them.
Hi, I am Tanisha and I am the co-founder of Sangya project. Sangya was first started last year with the intention of being a digital space for pleasure discourse and sex ed, and it has since grown into a brand for self-exploration as well as partnered exploration of intimacy and pleasure and everything that falls in between. And today I'm going to be speaking with you about the evolution of designs in pleasure products. While the earliest sex toy was probably documented around 30,000 years ago, we're only looking at the way sex toys were developed in the 1900s and what has changed since. In the early 1900s, we had toys that were primarily sold as beauty products for women. So they were massagers that would help with skin health and promote blood circulation and help with stress relief and pain management as well. And the second class of vibrators and massagers was sold to physicians and doctors so they could use that to relieve stress and relieve pain in their patients. Now, with electrical innovation soaring and manufacturers getting a better understanding of what their customers are really looking for, the functionality and the intensity at which pleasure products function and can deliver at what they're designed for started to grow and change as well. So manufacturers were then stuck with a market that they needed to serve more toys to, but had to navigate obscenity laws as well. And their strategy at the time, this stems especially from Japan, was to create toys that look like animals. So they looked like benign household products or toys that you could have lying around, but were actually heavy duty or really, really small portable sex toys that could be used personally or between couples as well. Another strategy was to then make these toys look like cosmetic items like a lipstick or mascara bottle, etc., just so that it could still fit in houses and serve the purpose of being a pleasure product without violating anyone's discretion or any obscenity laws. I am now going to show you two products that were part of Sangya's catalog, and you'll see that the manufacturer themselves has been able to modify the design to better accommodate high functionality and higher aesthetics and focus less on making toys that look like anatomy or were more phallic in general. So the Sangya 39 is what we had available earlier this year, which has now evolved into Sangya 39 Plus. The design is sleeker, it is slimmer, it has lesser in common with actual phalluses, and it looks more like a luxurious investment than the original Sangya 39 does. Now, this is because manufacturers are learning how to better use silicon and produce high quality products with medical grade silicon, but they're also realizing that the customer's priority is self-exploration with pleasure and curiosity and less about replacing a body part or adding a body part to the mix. I'm now going to run you through some of Sangya's products to tell you how we figured out what people are really looking for. The Sangya 83, as you can see here, is discreet. It can be used by an individual or partners and is very travel friendly. These are all questions that our customers have asked us very regularly, and they seem incredibly thrilled that products can deliver on these fronts. Another product that has done really well is the Sangya 7. And we think that one of the major reasons it's doing so well is because it is gender free and can be used for any combination of anatomy. People are more and more open to experimenting with designs and playing around with different toys. And the less gendered it feels, the less the toy expects you to have a certain identity, the more happy people seem to be about investing in it. Another product, as you've already seen this one, Sangya 39 Plus, I think the reason it's doing really well is because it looks more luxurious, it feels more indulgent, and it is multifunctional, unlike its predecessor, and is also sleek. I think there is also a market for people who are looking to invest in sex toys and feel like they have really indulged and treated themselves to something fancy. And that seems to affect the way people look at toys and the way they shop for them too. So some of the key trends we've seen in our customers when they shop from us is, one, they are looking to explore themselves. There is a desire to figure out what pleasure means for them and what it looks like. And toys play a huge role in helping them figure out what different parts of their body feel and what different parts of their body would like. Another trend we've noticed is that people are really opening up to the idea of sharing pleasure. They want toys, they want matching toys for themselves and their partners so that it can feel like they're sharing moments of intimacy and intense pleasure at the same time, even when they can't meet each other in person. And I think that's a really sweet thing to derive from a market of sex toys. Finding more pleasure together is something that we've seen with a lot of couples where people have been together for a long period of time. They're very comfortable with each other, and they are now simply curious about what else they can add to the bedroom to make things more exciting and more pleasurable for each other. This is the most important trend, I believe, is that a lot of people are looking for spaces where they can find validation in each other simply by talking about what their experiences with specific toys have been like and what their body's reaction was like or what their mind's reaction to the product was like. And people want to know that their pleasure experiences are slightly unique, but still somehow shared with some other individuals in the world so that they can feel a little more comfortable in the way their mind and body respond to sexual experiences. Where to from here? The idea is to make pleasure accessible across larger age ranges. You will see brands making products more financially affordable. You will see them using language that caters to a larger age group, and you will see more people investing in sex toys simply because the younger ones feel like they want to explore pleasure and have a better understanding of it before they get into long-term relationships, while the older ones are more interested in, for lack of a better phrase, making up for lost time. People feel like they have missed out on certain experiences in their younger years and they want to explore that now through toys. You will see more brands importing pleasure toys into India because manufacturing is still technically illegal. You will see them become less and less gendered and more pleasure-centric and easier to pass off as a household item or a decor item through pastel colors and happy aesthetics. And I think one of the major reasons for those changes is because pleasure today is finally something that you can and should be able to take into your own hands and figure out on your own. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Aprajita, and thank you for getting me on board for this conference. And I'm going to go right into my session. The poster that you see in front of you is the headmask of the National Family Planning Program that India had from 1954. The inverted red triangle was created in 1969, but from 54 to 78, we've had this idea of agla bacha abhi nahi, teen ke baad kabhi nahi, and teen becomes do, and so the the idea of the small family is from two-child family to a three-child family to a two-child family to now a one-child family in many states. It has been around for a really long time. I'm going to start with a graph from 1965, which shows how family planning acceptors have worked since 1965. Sterilizations have always been high, and you will see that certain months are higher than others. That's because sterilization camps were being carried out in certain months of the year. And when that happens, a lot of clusters of the population are encouraged to go through vasectomies or tubectomies in those camps. Now, these camps have continued to play a very important part of the population control program in the country, and they are not regarded as coercion. And according to the scholars I study, they are on the borders of coercion and choice, because at one level, sterilization is one of the ways in which you can reduce your family. On the other hand, if the state is pushing you towards that as the only form of contraception and way to reduce your family, then that's a problem. In the changing mix of contraceptives available to the population, vasectomies were high, especially in the late 1960s, as you will see. Tubectomies have been around. They are low in this circumstance because Iuds were pretty popular and condoms were popular. Condoms started being mass-produced from 1967 with the coming of Iuds, and which is why their uptake was pretty high for that year. Foam tablets, jellies, and diaphragms are things that your grandmother probably would know about, because those were available in the market from the 1950s. They were not very useful, but they were forms of spermicides which were common in developing markets in the world over in the 50s. What you have in front of you are interesting photographs from the archival material that I put up. On the left is a photograph accompanying a newspaper report of a massive tubectomy camp that happened in Andhra Pradesh in April 1969. The women who are lined up in the photograph are those who are acceptors, women who wanted to go through sterilization, tubectomies in the camp. They have paper documents in their hands which show some kind of legalization, consent taking. However, whether they've been asked about other forms of contraception, whether they've been counseled about other forms of contraception, we don't know. This photograph does not make that clear. On the right-hand side, you see the advertisement for Iuds for a certain kind of woman, a woman who wants happiness, who wants to do better for the family, for the nation, and she's being encouraged to take the loop, which is a form of IUD. From the 50s and 60s, what is common is the counseling that came with birth control. Young mothers were told how to look after their children. They were told about nutrition. They were told about how to avoid stunting in children. And these kind of counseling centers started becoming purely sterilization centers by the 70s. And that becomes a problem because no one really knows where to go for this kind of advice anymore. It is either the Asha or the nurse who is supposed to give you that advice. And that they may not be in a position to counsel young women on social habits around and hygiene and nutrition and in a marriage anymore. So these holistic aspects of family planning are which were part of the 50s and 60s are pretty much gone from the 70s onwards. Here again, you see a whole package of what all was available to the country, to the nuclear family that was coming up in terms of birth control. And it is important to mention that in the paper trail, I didn't find any of the kind of stereotypes that you find about Muslims' fertility. Here you have a photograph of the Shahi Imam talking to young Muslim men about sterilization and Parivar Niyojan in Uttar Pradesh, next to the masjid. And you will see the red triangle, inverted red triangle in the posters around the assembly. And clearly, he's encouraging the men to take on the role of nation builders through Parivar Niyojan. Again, you have the advertisement for sterilizations in the hospitals in Delhi. You will notice in this advertisement that cash benefits are 15 rupees for men and 25 rupees for women in these hospitals for taking for contraception, for taking up sterilization. Okay, so you have several such advertisements that show that there is a nuclear family that the state is encouraging. And when we come to the 1950s, and even in the latest 2015-16 surveys, the National Family Health Surveys, you will notice that the entire paradigm has shifted. You don't see that much stress on vasectomies anymore. Male sterilization is reduced to 2%. In 2015, it's 0.3%. Female sterilization has increased drastically, 34% in 1990s and 36% in 2015. And half the population is not using any kind of contraception. So what does that say about birth control practices in India, especially in a situation where fertility is declining drastically in the country? This is the question that I want to leave you with. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sandeep TK from Talasheri, Kerala, currently living and working in Bangalore. And I'm associated with an art collective called One Shanti Road. So here I'm going to talk a little bit about a photo project that I've been doing with my trans friends in Kerala, titled Declaration of Empathy. This series of photographs and stories took its shape because of the efforts of my friends Anna Mary Magdalene and her mother Mia Shivaram. Actually, Anna Mary Magdalene is my sister now, and Mia Shivaram is also my mother. And they actually took me under their wings, and it's been an interesting journey so far. Declaration of Empathy is about queer individuals who had to drop out from schools or colleges and move to another city to find an alternative family, to be truthful to their identity, or to become who they really are. So I asked my friends what was their dream profession when they were in school. And these photographs you see on the screen are the results of these questions. So there are a lawyer, there is priest, there is a police officer, there is even a professional bodybuilder, and many more you can see in these photographs. Rishana is a friend of mine, so one day she visited Bangalore and she was staying with me. Her desire is to become a badass bodybuilder and she liked riding bike. So I took her to my gym and she was playing around with the dumbbells and posing for the photograph. So that's why I took this photo. And then there is Sherlyn. She wants to be a politician. When I told her about this project, she immediately took me to this Communist Party office and she only got permission to click this photograph. I also would like to remember the name of Anya Kumari Alex, because before recording this video I saw one of my friends WhatsApp status that today is Anya Kumari Alex's birthday. She left us in last July because of the difficulty she has to go through after the down surgery. So she made many social media posts and YouTube videos about her SRS that went wrong. So you can find these videos if you Google her name. Actually, I never interacted with Ananya. but we had many common friends. I've been hearing a lot about her before doing Declaration of Empathy and even now. But during the project, when I was in Kochi, I got the opportunity to go to Maharaja's College to see this show that is conducted by Dwaya. It was a fashion show. And Ananya Kumari Alex was the host. Listening to her, I thought she is fantastic. She was such a fantastic host and she's so entertaining. And I was imagining she's hosting bigger shows and, she's going places. I think Declaration of Empathy is relevant, because I think it's an archive of dreams and struggle. And we have to constantly speak about our community and struggle. I think that is the only way to move forward. I imagine these photographs taking the form of a book with handwritten stories of each individual in the photos and the stories written by them in the book. Because these photographs are the results of their desire and how they want to be seen. My job was only to click the photographs, in the location of the photo or even the costume they want to wear. Everything is selected by them. So I think it would be interesting if each individual can write the stories of their self in the book. They can narrate their own stories. And actually I imagine all my works in the form of a book because of the experience you have holding the book closer to you. It's an intimate experience. And when you hold a book and flip through the pages, you are having a deep communication, or you're having a close communication with you and your book. So I hope one day Declaration of Empathy will take as a form of a book with the stories and the pictures, and people can have an intimate relationship or like an intimate interaction with the book. Thank you.
Hi, this is Suhas. I'm co-founder and CEO of Misters, India's leading men's sexual brand. So in the absence of data, stereotypes thrive, for we still have to process the world. In a lot of ways, it is the human condition. And over centuries of absence of data, stereotypes get entrenched and take root. And then any process where you bring in data to chip away at these stereotypes has to be a slow and patient one. Men's experience of sex as an area is one such example where centuries of silence has been interspersed only by exaggeration in terms of what the sexual experience is for men. Given that men's expectations of sex and of themselves and their performance during sex is invariably unreal and mostly harmful. As India's leading brand in the men's sexual wellness space, we see our goal as much in enabling this conversation, an honest conversation about sex, as in the sales of our products. Over the last 2 years, we have acquired a lot of data in this data elusive category. Its data elusivity is not altogether surprising because, like we said, men do not talk about sex honestly. In our analysis, we see three broad themes as important to be discussed, all three going to certain stereotypes. Theme one, or let's say stereotype one, is that men always want to have sex. It is a stereotype which obviously is reinforced through porn, but also through Bollywood, and also sometimes somewhat surprisingly through sitcoms coming out from the liberal coasts of America, where the male characters are always keen to have sex. Our data shows that a pretty salient 7% of men never want to have sex. They do not see that as a problem. It's something that they see as part of themselves. It is significant enough for it to not be dismissed as some fringe experience, at which asexuality as a position often is. It is how men see their lives. The other 93%, it's not as if they conform to the stereotype of always wanting sex. It is layered. Some men would, around 21% we see, have a once a week view of sex as ideal. There are others who would think twice a week, around 19%, and so on. There are some who are happy with it being an irregular occurrence. Overall, why this data is important is that it is seen as an intrinsic quality of man to always want sex. But it's a different experience when we talk to people and when data emerges. It complicates the idea of man. And that complicating the idea is probably the starting point of chipping away at stereotypes here. The second one I want to talk about is that men are always ready to have sex. So we talked about the question of desire in the first piece, but then there is the question of capability, intent and capability, let's say. This assumes that men are always ready to have sex, which means that functionally they are good to go. Drop of a hat, they'll get an erection. Reinforced through bar conversation, through locker room conversation. However, global data complicates this. Around 20% of people in their 20s, and as a neat thumb rule, 30% in their 30s, 40% in their 40s, have had at least one experience when they did not get an erection when they needed one. What not getting an erection when you need one does is that it brings down your erection confidence. It's a measure we talk to people about, that how confident are you about getting one the next time? And only 28% men are absolutely certain that they will get an erection the next time they want to have intercourse or they're about to have intercourse. What happens to the other 72%? They still have this stereotype, this expectation that they should be good to go anytime. It can only be inferred, but one reckons they are on some spectrum of self-loathing, some spectrum of acting out in passive-aggressive, violent, non-violent ways to make peace with the dissonance. The third stereotype we want to discuss is that a real man is always able to satisfy the woman. And I'm deliberately using heteronormative language here because of its salience in terms of the data we have. Every man is expected to satisfy the woman every time. While when we see what people come to misters with is around 62% men want to find a way to satisfy the partner. There's a dissonance there. The stereotype is way off mark because 62% clearly want help with that objective. However, even if one assumes that that is the objective, one is likely to think that it will make for a good world, like a world full of generous lovers. However, there's a twist, as probably you saw coming, that only 8% of all men ever talk to their partners about sex. So it's an interesting story that they want to satisfy the partner, but do not necessarily try to understand what the partner wants. What happens in this knowledge deficit versus the objective? This is where porn and film step in. Around 43% people report porn and films or films as one of their key informants about sex. And porn, with its language of dominance, of wives and girlfriends and bhabis and stepsisters, taken by awesome force by a man, left asking for water, idiomatically speaking. And this objective of satisfaction, what this journey starts with, ends up being answered in the language of power, of some great game, of power being more important than pleasure. So satisfaction to dominance is an interesting change in the journey, is an interesting shift, because what started out as a basic quest with a vis-a-vis a person gets answered by what people learn from porn. Videos with magical claims around satisfying partners or dominating them with this outright power run into millions of views on YouTube and are responsible for an economy of 300 million USD. All of this can only change slowly and painstakingly and through conversation and telling of stories, stories of lives and experiences, stories of specificity, and stories with numbers. I'm very happy that this forum invited me to speak, to tell at least some of these stories on behalf of Misters. Thank you very much.
Hi again. Thanks to all our Pleasure Pocket speakers, Tanisha, Aprajita, Sandeep, and Suhas, for sharing your experiences and insights with us. Once again, thank you to Michael for joining us today. You can find more information about all our speakers and the organizations they're associated with, both in the Zoom chat box and on our website. Thank you, Manak, for moderating the session. And a big thank you to our ISL translators, our Hindi and Tamil translators, and our very patient and perfectionist tech team. And of course, thanks to our whole LSD team. This was our first session for the day, and the rest of our programming this Saturday is a very pleasurable one. After this, we have 2 panel discussions happening: Runaway, Desires, Guavas, and Crime. What happens when you don't include pleasure in interventions at 11:30, and Communities DIY Data at 12:30. And do look at our schedule for the rest of the day. We have 2 amazing closing talks and performances. At 5:30, we have Shubha Mudgal. Please don't miss that. I'm especially looking forward to that. It's at 5:30 p.m. It will also be streamed on YouTube. And then we have another event at the end of the night, the Lonely Hearts Club, directed and conceived by Anuja Ghosalkar. And it's a play specially conceived for the Zoom stage. It's happening at 8 p.m. and you really shouldn't miss it. Just to wrap up, follow Agents of Ishq and the YP Foundation on Instagram and Twitter and other social media for more updates. Tweet at us and tweet at your friends with the hashtag Love, Sex and Data about all the sessions we have today. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you in the next panel. Bye.